for 'twas a dark, cold night in Cymru. Our hearts went dim as soon we learnt 'twas a night the TARDIS burnt. Pull the futs out, let's rejoice! Who'll replace them, Chip? Now's our choice. Assemble a cast. Who do we need? White colors and creeds and a female lead.
Greetings, everyone. It is with the most heart-achingly painful regret that I inform you that I've watched the colorized version of the War Games. This absolute travesty and morally and creatively bankrupt endeavor starts out with the most perfect scene in the world to emphasize how much of a pile of steaming rubbish it is. I could not ask for a better portrayal of the state of Doctor Who today than to open up with Nishuti Gatwa crying. Now, some of you may not even know this exists. I'm sure it has tens of fans across the world. It aired on BBC's iPlayer and was only made available to subjects of the United Kingdom. Loyal, license-paying fools and people that have peg legs and eye patches. So the general premise of this is that they are taking older serials from the 1960s and colorizing them. But they're not just doing a direct Ted Turner colorization. No. What they're doing is trimming them down, in this case by 2/3 of the serial's runtime, in order to portray them to the modern audience, whoever they may be. Again, people, I'm sure in the tens are buying this if they can find it as a bootleg, because they don't have the attention span to sit through a 10-episode story. So aside from the fact that 2/3 of the story is missing, this episode suffers from basically the inversion of what a lot of other shows suffer from today with pacing. You see it in modern streaming and television. They take a premise that should span maybe 90 to 200 minutes, somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours or so, 2.5 hours, maybe even 3, and they stretch it out into 8 to 10 agonizing hours over a span of several months. Skeleton Crew, thankfully, is a much shorter show per episode. I've been watching that, and the episodes vary in runtime from around 50 minutes all the way down to around 22, which definitely makes it feel like the premise for this was originally a film and not a television show. In any case, we're on Doctor Who tonight, and the pacing is abysmal because it is choppy. Scenes are accelerated. If you take something that has good pacing, like Doctor Who did in the 1960s, and you cut out bits and pieces of it and patch it back together as some sort of abhorrent tapestry, you end up with jarring pacing, where things are happening all over the place and it's actually difficult to keep focused. As a matter of fact, this episode gave me alcohol poisoning. I had to stop it many times, and by the time I got halfway through it, I had passed out from intoxication. Thankfully, the next day I awoke from my grief and I watched the rest of it. But that's not really the only place where this suffers so terribly. The colorization is very spotty at places, and I'm not going to show every single instance of this, but it's really easy to detect them. Basically, anytime they do a shot where they colorize the people, they seem to forget to colorize the background through windows. You can see the door here in this shot is all grey. They didn't even bother. And then when we skip ahead again, right there. Look at the barn doors. Nice and brown. Jamie's kilt, nice red. The background behind the doors is black and white. And this is literally all through the whole episode. There are many, many shots of exactly this problem. And then, of course, there's the absolutely terrible and jarring CGI. This shot. This shot, I think, could be its own drinking game. They use this same establishing shot of this CGI dome that's not from the original show at all, I think 5 or 6 times. One time it had some biplanes or something flying across it, but that was the only difference. And this is just the beginning of the Nightmare Show.
Planet. So
and here we go again. In the original story, they describe what they have done to the planet, but this is just tacky effects that have been added on for no particular reason.
All warlike people will remain prisoners forever. You have been found guilty of all charges, and you and your murderous associates will be dematerialized.
They couldn't help but insert this.
It's time to say goodbye to your friends.
There must be something we can do.
No.
Obviously, we know what the Citadel of Gallifrey looks like, and at no point in this story were any of them outside of it to observe it from that perspective, and it just makes no sense whatsoever. It's basically an establishing shot for something we already know about. I assume it's going to be for people that have never watched the show before, but then wouldn't it just be confusing to them to see this orange dust and the Citadel of Gallifrey? What are they thinking?
We accept your plea that there is evil in the universe that must be fought, and that you still have a part to play in that battle.
What do you mean, that you're going to let me go free?
Not entirely. We have noted your particular interest in the planet Earth. The frequency of your visits must have given you special knowledge of that world and its problems.
Yeah, yes, I suppose that's true. Earth seems more vulnerable than others, yes.
For that reason, you will be sent back to that planet. Oh, good. In exile.
Of course, this was done for a very practical reason at the time, and it was basically budgeting for the show. They wanted to move the show from black and white to color, which was a much more expensive process. And therefore, they had to abandon a lot of the fancy sets and wardrobe and just deal with whatever they had on location.
You will be sent to Earth in the 20th century, and will remain there for as long as we deem proper.
Notice how they couldn't help but insert a floating, translucent picture of the Earth into that shot, which is completely non-uniform with the look and aesthetic of the area, the show, the time period, anything.
And for that period, the secret of the TARDIS will be taken from you.
But you can't condemn me to exile on one primitive planet in one century?
And here, of course, the infamous inserts.
He's too thin! Yes, that one's too young! Oh, no, that won't do at all! That's ridiculous!
I could not agree more. It is ridiculous. The worst of the worst is about to begin, and I'm just going to let this play out. It's about a minute long. The regeneration sequence of the plastic version of the second Doctor and the waxwork version of the third.
Doctor, it's a very kind man. I shall never forget. Never.
look at his nostril there and tell me that they couldn't do better than this. This is pathetic. And what's even more absurd is that they will transition from this shot of an obviously CGI doctor to actual footage of John Pertwee. And it is so radically different that I can't imagine anyone's immersion not being broken by it.
Where am I? What?
Naturally, whoever put this in here thought they were very clever, because in Tom Baker's era, that he stated that they were in the 1980s. Sarah Jane, during Pyramids of Mars, said that she's from 1980. So they just can never get over the fact that the 1970s episodes were supposed to be taking place in the 1980s, but clearly were not. In any case, I can't imagine this being of any practical value to the future of the franchise. Maybe it will get a few people interested in the older shows, but it certainly makes no sense. I would say that the colorization techniques are a definite improvement over prior efforts. The music that they inserted is a bit jarring at times, especially when they have all of these sort of dialed back electronica versions of the Master's theme. But the presentation is the problem. If they had done simply the entire War Games, no special inserts, just colorize the entire serial, I would still feel it is an abomination, but I would not hate it as much as I hated experiencing this. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you in the future.
What shall we do? Who shall we hire? More to the point, who do we fire? Writers with talent, first are to go. Following that, the plot must blow.